Okay, we are live. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody, and watching those development modes or for tuning in right now. We're really excited to get some behind the scenes thoughts about our characters. I'm, I don't know if you know this, really jazzed to talk about the Cicatrix's ghost girlfriend. I've only mentioned it 1,000 times, but I'm very, very excited. So, we have most of the cast here tonight. Bruce will be at GaryCon. So, those of you who are hanging out with Bruce, go enjoy. We will have him here for future live from the Actuality sessions. Um, Thank you so much for watching. We really love seeing what you are all really latching onto and what excites you. And boy, do we have some really, really good sessions coming up. So please keep tuning in. I've gotten yeah, I'm just getting, one or two episodes ahead as I sort of check the video, and I keep being like, "Oh my gosh, that happened." I'm so glad we have the name of the thief now, Kendon, because I've been like, don't say her name." I couldn't remember if I keep being trying not to spoil things. So, yeah, we were gonna start this by sort of sharing some of our really bursting thoughts and opinions and kind of talking amongst ourselves. And while we're doing that, we hope that you in chat will give us some questions about what you'd like to hear us talk about. Um, details of maybe our characters or the story. Especially, we're really excited to make this come alive for all of you. So, post questions in chat. We're going to keep an eye on that, and then we'll sort of round back to your questions and make sure we get your burning questions answered in near the end of the segment. Monty, as
Cool.
our
Yeah.
GM, would you like to?
Yeah, absolutely. I loved in just the very last episode, uh, as you guys, I mean, yes, her name is Kendon. We found that out in the dev mode just now, but throughout that entire episode, she was
Two, three.
2, and then she became 2-3, and then
Oh
suddenly
gosh.
she's 4, and I love that. For some reason I get a real kick out of when PCs are forced to come up with names for NPCs whose names they don't actually know. I don't know. That's always really funny, and and yours really work. But let's just kind of start more generally. So we have made it all the way through essentially 2 sessions, right? We had the first session with character creation, and then a first real session in action mode and whatnot, that we divided up into 2 episodes. So Seru, where's Seru sitting at this point in the narrative, right? You've done all this crazy violin chasing caper. You found out some information, but what's going on in Seru's head?
Well, Seru was just such a very laid back sort of character, and right now he's just kind of rolling with what everyone else is doing. He has his agenda where he wants to make this really powerful magical sword, and we're taking baby steps right now towards that. Obviously, we've played through more than what the audience has seen right now, and so we know that things start to pick up the pace for everybody's character arcs, and we start getting some really weird stuff happening, and yeah,
No spoilers.
no spoilers, but it gets pretty crazy. I think the neat thing for me for playing this is that this character Seru is so different from my Callahan character in terms of attitude and personality and what the character can do. And so seeing the contrast between one and the other is just really nice to see how the system allows me to kind of play whatever I want.
And Callahan, of course, is Sean's kind of long-term Invisible Sun character that we've been playing. We've been running a playtest narrative now for almost a year and a half now, like, or well over a year and a half now, actually. And so Seru and Callahan are his 2 characters, and they are very different, and that's fun to watch. What about Inkalia? What's going on in Inkalia's head at this point? Now that you've recovered the smoldering violin, you've encountered Kendon. You need to go to Gamro's tower next.
Yeah, and Callie is so much about learning, like gaining knowledge, right? I mean, she just eats knowledge, and so this idea that like everything is a mystery that leads to a mystery is sort of like the sort of crux of her personality, right? Like she's so fascinated and driven by solving these mysteries, but the fact that like every mystery leads to a new one is just this really interesting propelling force for her. And so one of her driving characteristics is the fear that the discovery of the mystery will not be as interesting as the sort of getting to the mystery. And so she's also in that place of like, oh no, what if it's just, what if all these great raven tokens we have are nothing? And what if the girl from the other shore really just is someone who rowed a boat across the thing, right? And so she has all these fears that it's just going to be nothing. And so I think like this is a point where me as the player knows so much more than her as the character, and I love that. It's like this great tension of like, just keep going, Incalia. Like,
And Darcy, what about the cicatrix? Where
I
is she at in her head right at this moment?
So at the end of session, of session 2, right? So we've finally got the smoldering violin, right? And we've returned it to Audsley Barron. But before that, there was the woman we took it from. The woman who was about to buy it illegally, I will remind you, from Kendon.
now
And
you're being moral.
well, yeah. But so she offered, she's like, okay, what's Audsley going to pay you? I'll just pay you more. And
Right.
like, I think this is a fun moment for me as a player and a character, right? Because like a lot of times I play like the do-gooder and we're just going to like be a real good person. I'm like, I don't really know who this character is yet. Like, I know what their motivations are, like the order of own thought, right? And I'm a gallant, right? So I was trying to play to my heart of like bold action. And so what I really liked about Invisible Sun is it gave me all of these hooks to play off of. But when I got that offer, I was like, I might be the kind of person who takes the better offer. Like, we really aren't the constables or the constabulary that I lied about us being. What obligation do I have to this woman? And then my fellow players were like, and so I was like, oh no, I'm like, and so I think the moment where I had to grapple with, do I kind of make the moral choice? What is moral for me? And how does that fit within the rest of the party? That was a really cool illuminating moment for me of like, okay, who really am I? So I think and I think like the moment we leave at the end of that session, I'm still wondering that. And I think that's a way that the character kind of like explores later on in the show. So.
And as your character has the unrequited bond with mine, like when you were thinking about that and making that decision, I'm thinking, okay, so how she chooses to act on this or not is really going to affect my opinion of her and therefore my opinion of this organization that she wants me to join.
Right. That's a great point. I wasn't even thinking about that, but the cicatrix definitely thought about it more later on. So exciting.
So what was, what was going through Incalia's mind when she found out that in fact the woman that you're working for who sent you up in this smoldering violin, you've done this whole thing, right? Because you understand that the girl from the other shore, she has all the information that you need, but in fact she has almost none of the information that you need. What's going through your mind is that realizations, sinks in. Audsley Barron is just kind of slowly releasing the idea that no, she doesn't know anything.
It's interesting because I thought that I would. So at first I thought that Audsley was really interesting, and I like walked in and she has all this promise of information, like you said, and like and the weird thing is that after meeting Kendon, I'm much less interested in Audsley because I think Kendon is much more interesting and has much more, like, she's the kind of person whose brain is interesting to me. And she's corrupt, which gives me an opportunity as sort of to be on my moral high horse and still kind of screw with her brain. Whereas Audsley is not like, I guess it wasn't that unexpected that she kind of screwed us. And so she's much like, I'm all about like, who is this Kendon person? So finally learning her name in that side scene, and also of course I know her name and Savion doesn't. And since we have a competition, until we get back to this table, until we meet again, I'm a step ahead, right? Is that where we learn Savion? Oh no,
no, it's the other way around.
He learned Savion first.
It's the other way around.
Right. Oh no! don't let him watch this part. That's right. Yeah, that was sadness when we figured out that they had figured out who they were. But yeah, I think people like Savion who have these like abilities, this mental skill, really, really intrigues me.
Yeah. Sean, I remember sitting at the table and kind of watching your face fall a little bit as Audsley said, "Oh, I don't actually know her." What was going through your head?
I mean, so she is such a flamboyant character, and I, as a person, and Sarah as a character, just kind of tends to take people at face value. So it's like, oh, she knows about the girl from the other shore, great, and then she doesn't. It's just like, why did you you lie? And then,
Oh, but technically she didn't lie. You guys just made the assumption that she had the information and she just wanted her violin back.
and I suppose it's fair that we just kind of rolled with the idea that yes, we're here from the constabulary, and we just let her think what she wanted to think.
Rolled with the idea. What a fascinating way to say it. Went with the cicatrix's lie.
It
Oh,
is
boy.
very interesting as the GM to watch and have it be Darcy whose character is the one who is sort of the corrupting influence on the other characters, who's I mean, how close were you to taking her up on the offer of selling her the violin?
Razor's edge. I very nearly did. I was like, yeah, that is who I'm becoming. I already lied. I just knocked on the door. I think it was, I usually play characters that kind of sneak and are quiet, but like I was a gallant, and so I was like, bold lies and like, taking and like, you got to be a mover and a shaker if I want to restore the sort of own thought. So I very nearly did, but I think it was Incalia's horrified face that made me go, oh. So, but I very nearly did, and I don't know. I wonder how the narrative would have gone if maybe I had pushed a little harder on you guys, because you guys are still willing to put up with some of my crap,
Well, in theory, right, to sort of answer that question, I mean, there probably were other avenues of inquiry that you could where you
Mhm.
could have found out the information that you wanted. It was not a,
Right.
oh, narrative's over, right?
Everyone go home.
Right, right. There's always multiple avenues to get information. The flow of information is so important in Invisible Sun. Someone uh I think we were playing a Numenera game recently where someone said, I know, let's go do research on such and such. And I was like, no, that's Invisible Sun, right? But that is such an Invisible Sun thing to
It
say.
is.
Let's research, right? I mean, that is like the Visley catchword. Let's research.
And what I like about it is there's so many ways to research too, which I think we'll see, especially during development mode scenes. Maybe for like the next live show, there's just like go research is such an interesting and like varied and fruitful like thing to do, right? I love how our development mode scenes, it never just gives you like the answer you want, right? It always introduces a
Right.
little more about the world or give you kind of a character moment. So yeah, I think the development mode scenes were one of my favorite, and I noticed you saying this in the chat, Monty, like they're just so great for letting your character shine a little bit and like explore on a personal level without feeling like you're taking up too much space at the table. Ugh.
Well, right. And like Sean was saying in the chat too, I love it when, a player learns some bit of juicy info in a development mode scene and then brings it to the table in the next regular session and gets to be the one who has the secret, who provides the information. I love doing that rather than the GM just saying, okay, you know this and you've learned that. And I think that's really
When
great.
even research becomes a chance to enhance your character, like as a logivore, right? I'm not allowed in most libraries because I read more books, and so like it requires a secondary way of either finding like developing a skill to mask myself or to sneak in or to find another way to do research because the main way is kind of closed off to me, and so that's really fun. I can start thinking about like all these past books that I've eaten that are now causing me to not be able to learn anymore because I'm not allowed in, and I think that's just really lovely. I mean,
I
not
think
really, but
And I think having the different orders really feeds into that as well, because Advance is going to have different resources than a Goetic is, and a Apostate doesn't have, an order of people that they can necessarily rely on. So they're going to have to find other avenues. An example is in our in-house game. Bruce's character is an Apostate, and he and his dad own a bookshop, and so a lot of his research is just like, well, I'm going to go read the tabloids, read the newspapers, see what's going on there.
It was in fact in that playtest that we sort of determined that Saturaine is just awash in like gossip magazines and that kind of thing, which I think fits the setting really well, but I would not probably have thought of that on my own. So
pretty awesome.
I love it when things like that come out sort of organically out of the playtests. So, let's go back actually to the first session, since we haven't really chatted, since then, right? We didn't have one of these live sessions after the first session. And, what are your guys' thoughts on how that went, and, the interesting or otherwise ideas that came out of that, and what things made you happy, and what, is there anything that came out of that first session that where someone else suggested something for your character that ended up really shaping your character and the way you played them, without giving any spoilers?
Who is it that's neighbors with Nathan Nevermole?
Yeah, that's poor Incalia.
To remind everybody, Nathan Nevermole is a character in the setting, and he's kind of known as the actually guy.
And he also came out of our in-house playtest.
He did, because the player characters were sitting around in a bar in Zeros, and we're talking about something, and then suddenly someone walked up and said, "Well, actually," and then corrected them on something that they had gotten wrong. And so he's kind of been a feature in Saturaine now.
The thing that I'm most amazed by, both in our session 0 per session and in hearing other people like the playtesters that back the Kickstarter talking about it, is how players understand story more than we think that we do sometimes, and how people's ability to choose a thing that just sort of goes right to the heart of your character in a good way or a bad way is so lovely, and we just do it instinctively. Like, we're like, oh well, let's do this thing, and then you jump off of a thing that exists, and you suddenly have this really concrete, heartfelt piece that you can add to your character that's given to you by the other players, and I just love that so much. I don't know, that's just one of my favorite parts.
Well, it came sort of out of the first session, right? That Cicatrix has a girlfriend who's a ghost, but that Incalia had dated her in the past.
Right. So then suddenly we have this whole connection of like history that was this kind of.
And this sort of came about just sort of organically right there on the spot.
Yeah, we were just chatting about relationships, I think, at that point.
Yeah, and that's such a, it would have been so awkward for me to propose that, right? I never in a million years would have proposed, why, Shanna, why don't you be the previous amicable ex-lover of my current ghost girlfriend, right? But the playing through it gives you these like complexity of relationships that just make it feel a lot more real, and give those characters and their relationships a depth that I just don't know that we would have gotten any other way other than having play. Almost only through play can you get that. And I also think like playing that, I was, when I was watching the first session, I was like, there were moments where I know I would be like, okay, I have the suggestion, but it's very like emotionally knife twisty, and I'm not sure if we all like want to go there. But that first session it's so collaborative, and I felt like as we played, I got a better sense of the kinds of things. I know you all fairly well, but I haven't played a lot of games with you guys yet. So through the first session, like, it's such a great way to learn what kind of things people care about in play without having to like write it out, right? I just felt like I learned a lot about what you guys dig as players too, which I think, set us up for feeling really comfortable, or at least I felt much more comfortable, like playing out themes of romance and stuff around you guys, because I knew you were sort of all thumbs up on that. So that was a secondary benefit of that I really dug.
You know, I mean, as a longtime gamer, right? I have seen people who, you know, who will take the time and they will write out a big long backstory about their character
Yeah.
on their character sheet or whatever, and then no one ever sees that, and sometimes they don't ever even look back at it, because it doesn't have anything to do with what's going on in the current campaign, and I think that that's a shame, right? And so bringing some of that right up to the fore in the first session, I think gives us a chance to really kind of put that on display and interact, right? Sean, is there anything that came out of the first session that kind of helped shape Seru as he moved forward?
It wasn't. It was kind of part of the first session in that when we were deciding what orders everyone was going to be, Shauna really wanted to be a maker. I was actually originally planning on having Seru be a maker, but I thought that I could change him to a weaver so that Shauna could play a maker, and I'd never played a weaver either. And it was nice to kind of, that change in his order changed the flavor of my character and what he was capable of doing and what he wanted to do, and also changed his interactions with the rest of the group.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and I like that you still kept this maker element, right? That he wants to make the sortier. I think that's really, I thought that was really
The
cool.
sword, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or a sword, sorry.
Mhm.
So that's really neat that you managed to meld the two, and it actually gave us a sort of a relationship, right? Because as a maker, I could help you with that, and so we instantly had this thing we've been working on, and I like having those jumping off points really ground me as a player, so I can start moving forward feeling like our characters actually do know each other and they have this history and these common goals, and that's, I don't know, that really helps me a lot. Particularly as a shy player, I feel like having, it's like when you go to a party and you know some people and you feel less alone at the party because you can kind of meet on that common ground. I feel like that when I play with people because we have this common ground kind of start.
Yeah, it's definitely not like a situation or the typical fantasy campaign where everybody is in a bar and there's a mysterious person in the corner. Like, you all know each other. Our characters are friends or lovers or business associates, whatever. We have these connections. And so we have this past that we're kind of evolving as play moves forward. We're filling in the backstory of how, we did this together or we fought over this thing. It's just really, really cool to see the dynamic go forward in time as we play and then backward in time, filling in the details.
I wrote about this in Invisible Sun design diary a long time ago, and if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, on MonteCookGames.com, you'll find all the design diaries that I've done, since well back when I was deep immersed in writing the game, and but I had gotten a lot of feedback that in the Cypher system, character creation was really simple, and that was intentional, right? That you basically make 3 choices and you're done, right? And that's because I like getting right to the game, or that's what I thought I liked. And then, but we got this feedback. I want to be able to put more emphasis in character creation. I want to be able to kind of tweak and play around with my character more. And I said, okay, let's go all the way to the other end of the spectrum, right? Where the character creation is quite involved, and in fact, involves the entire group in a whole session. And so I'm really, really happy with how that's manifested, and it's completely turned me around on character creation. I like the slow, really intricate, developed characters that you get out of Invisible Sun. I've been pleased actually too that some of the people that I've introduced to Invisible Sun are actually like professional fiction writers, and they are talking about how Invisible Sun actually allows them to portray characters in a way that they would, the way that they do when they write, but they've never been able to do that in a game before. Yeah.
That's really cool to hear. So I feel like we could probably say lots more. Monty, do you think we should go to a couple audience questions or?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. One that I thought was really interesting that I have no idea what your answers would be, so I want to pitch this one, is from the Astral Gateway on Twitch. They were asking whether like the experience of playing these characters and playing Invisible Sun and The Raven Wants What You Have, whether and how that has affected any of us outside of game. And I know I have a little story about that. So I guess what I wanted to share was just like, you know, I GM a lot, and I actually find it kind of hard to. I love jamming because you get to be all these different people, and I'm a commitment phobe, and so I could just go be this NPC this day and a different NPC the next day. And I actually find it really kind of stressful to like lock down on a character concept, and so a lot of my characters don't end up. I find it takes me a long time to give those characters depth, but because of all the stuff we've already said, we really like built that up to start with, and that I guess like that this character, I love the cicatrix for so many reasons, much more than I love almost any other probably character I've ever played. And I guess one of the things that really stuck with me after is this whole Order of the Hone thought thing. Like, it brought up questions in my life about like building something bigger than yourself, right? And so, and I think like the cicatrix's interactions with her friends and her her girlfriend and mentors and someone you're going to meet in the next development mode session, I think. Like, I don't know. I remember a lot of ideas about what I was contributing to the world, like the cicatrix was, right? I was like, am I, Darcy, contributing less to the world than my fictional character was in that? And if I liked what she was doing, should I also make that reflect what I'm doing more in the real world too? So that was one like very big, come to the actuality moment for me, I think. But I don't know, did any of you guys, and that's what like LARPers call bleed, I think, which is, when you are really embodying a character for a bit in play, how does that affect your life outside of play, for better or for worse? So I guess I had some bleed in a good way. What about you guys?
So I have an answer to that question, but I can't tell you what it is until the whole season's over. So someone
I'll have to write that down.
and I will reveal my answer to that. But it would be a spoiler to sort of reveal some of the stuff.
I was just sitting here thinking, how can I tell this story without telling the story? And I think if you're going to bring Monty back, I would like to come back and answer that.
Okay, that's great.
It's going to be a much better story if I can give you the details rather than say, and then we, redacted.
Right. What about you, Sean?
I would say that I don't want to spoil it because we're only into, episode 2, but I personally think of myself as a very laid back sort of person, but I can be very intense about things that interest me. So whether that's politics or, shows or humor or whatever, to the extent that like I didn't actually realize how intense I am when I'm very animated about those things. And so Seru is just this very laid back sort of guy. He's kind of like the Big Lebowski. He's just like, hey, whatever, it's cool. We're going to make this work. There will be a point in this narrative where Seru gets really intense, and like I have to point out to myself and the rest of the group, you've probably never seen him this intense before. This is very out of character. And there's a reason why he's like that, but it's just a really dramatic shift. And when that video gets ready for us to look at, I'm probably gonna have to watch it about 4 or 5 times just to see myself change as I do that. And you all know what I'm talking about.
Those are all true things. I was just thinking, you know yourself very well, Sean.
Monty, did you have any opinions on any of the questions we've got? I've got a little list going.
Oh,
Where are we looking at them? Sorry.
They're on Slack, but I'm happy to pitch you questions then if you don't have strong opinions.
Just go for it. Sorry.
Yeah. So there's a quick one.
Windows.
Oh no, it's awesome. So one question from, let's see, this is gosh, I forgot to write down who this is from, but they're lovely. I think it might have been Davidson. Was asking whether the cicatrix gets jealous if someone else summons her ghost girlfriend. And this is actually something that is happening in A Woman with Hollow Eyes. Like just this last episode was like to like get back at someone was trying to date a ghost, and their romantic rival basically summoned them. So they, which is like so horrible, and I'm so mad at them about it. So yeah, I think I feel like if you get summoned as a ghost, if you enter into some sort of like agreement with a Goetic, that's a pretty big deal. I would like to be kept abreast of that probably with my girlfriend. And I mean if she's all like, if she gets summoned and she was agreed to the summoning and she was there for the motive of it, that's great. But if she just got summoned by some random Goetic for some menial task, I'd be pretty mad. So that's my quick cicatrix question. Let's see. We also had a question from Above River about whether about how that text making the maker's matrix worked and whether those ingredients were improvised or whether they were pulled from a list. Shanna, could you talk to us about more about what was behind the scenes there?
Yeah, so we so as a maker, I ingredients are really important to me because I can use them for cool things. And so you start your character with sort of a workshop if you wanted, and then some ingredients. And so, um, kind of the GM controls like looks at the matrix and kind of tells you what types of ingredients you might need and what level and all these kinds of what tools. And so I kind of can look at my character tome and see what's in there and see what I have. And so, like at one, in other things, I was like, I have a caterpillar. That's an ingredient. And Monty's like, I don't think a caterpillar is going to work for that thing you're trying to make. And so part of it is actually choosing ingredients that go with the narrative of, making a ring required moonstone and things that were actually sort of ring-like as opposed to flower petals that I'd gotten somewhere.
But the very broad answer is yes, that there is an extensive list of ingredients in among the equipment. The equipment chapter of Invisible Sun is very, very extensive, and it kind of goes back to what we were saying before about character creation. It might matter what kind of sofa you have in your house, and
Right.
so there are multiple different kinds of sofas that you can get on the equipment list. Well, on a very practical level for makers, there is a huge list of materials, a huge list of
It's all super
ingredients,
weird and
all
cool.
all organized by level.
I really want someone to draw like a maker's workshop as part of our art thing. Because like imagine like you've got the jars of all these crazy things, like sort of it would just be amazing. It'd be super cool.
And of
Gosh,
course,
I would love that.
players and GMs can make up their own ingredients too and assign them levels, and it's just as simple as that. But there is a list.
It's super inspiring. There's also a very elaborate, furniture list
I
and
know.
fashion. And one thing I really liked is, I'm used to seeing women's fashion, but there's some sort of masculine coded items in there that were like cool cufflinks. And I was like, yeah, I could see that you guys work to really represent different kinds of fashion and items you could get, which I dug.
If you go to my Pinterest page, there is, in addition to all the different Invisible Sun Pinterest boards I have one devoted purely to fashion, and it's probably one of the cooler of the boards. So go check it out.
We should definitely. I'll tweet that out after this, maybe if that sounds good.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. We're getting near the end of the hour here, so I might take one more question, wrap it up. But we're gonna do one of these live sessions, basically every third Friday. So we'll have session 3 part 1, and then we'll have session 3 part 2, and then we'll have another live show. So I think some of these questions we'll probably revisit when we're not afraid of spoiling things too.
Yeah.
So keep
There's so
coming
much I
here.
want to say.
Well, and
I know.
also, let me throw out that every Friday, at least
Oh
some
yeah.
of us are in the chat, and so you can
Right.
throw out questions there too, and we try to answer some of them. So
Yeah, absolutely. Please come chat with us, and thank you so much for everybody who came here tonight. I guess there was one more question that I wanted to quickly ask that I think we'd be able to quickly go around and
sure.
address, and that is Rick Blair on Twitter was asking about whether whether there's going to be a follow-up series, whether we'll see more of these characters later on. But I think without revealing too much, I guess do you? I think we might shift that question to would you like to play these characters further? Or do you feel like you would want to try something else out if we were to return to an Invisible Sun stream? Yeah. And Monty, would if you had to GM another Invisible Sun stream, would you want to continue stuff or do something different? So
I'll start.
yeah.
I don't want to shape anybody else's answer, but I already have in mind what might happen. In some of the
Yeah.
follow-ups, and some of the things that we have set up, even in the episodes that people have seen, right, with Kendon and Audsley, and there are things that can easily come back in and play into further shenanigans that you guys can get into. And so I would be very, very thrilled to do that. And if other people want that, the thing to do is to help us, spread the word and get lots of people watching. Because if lots of people watch, then
Yeah, we can play some
we'll
more.
play some more. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll go next. I think I've already answered this earlier because I've been gushing so much about how much I love this character, but you know, without spoiling, right? I think even a time jump, what my character turns into and what she's able to accomplish, questions about her relationships. There's definitely a lot that I felt like this season, this narrative came to a really nice stopping point, but I have so many more questions. Invisible Sun, I feel like, is a game that just raises so many more questions sprout with every answer you get in really interesting ways. So I would definitely want to come back. What about you, Seru?
I totally agree. And I like how when each of us chose our initial character arc, that's really just kind of the starting point for that, because the cicatrix is working on reestablishing the order of home thought, but she's got a long way to go. Seru wants to make this glass sword, but once he makes it, he has to learn how to use it. So probably next character arc is, become a master swordsman. And Incalia has to expand her furniture rearranging abilities, that sort of thing. I think we all had a really good time. It was a very intense batch of sessions, but yeah, this is a fun character. I'm going to cosplay for one day at Gen Con as Seru.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely more. Please more.
That's awesome.
You
And
did
Shauna.
It's hard for me to answer without giving things away, because like we actually had this little mini session after we ended it. We were like, and then our characters are gonna do this, right? It was like we couldn't stop like getting involved, and so like we have this whole thing in our heads already of what kind of the next step for some of our characters, and I'm so excited about that. I'm kind of a player who my characters kind of really develop during play, and so I'm sort of a slow character developer in that way, and so one of the things I love about Invisible Sun, it gives me the time to really sink into my character. And so just as we were finishing like this amazing, everything great, and then like I was like, and then ta-da! So I really hope that we get to do that sort of ta-da moment and keep going.
Well, and even if one of you guys did say, I'd like to give another character a try, we could still work that. We could still
Oh,
do
yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, one person could just be a different character or whatever. Like, for example, in Raven Wants What You Have, we don't have a Vance character, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
it might be interesting to see a Vance character come into this group and see what happens. So.
That's a great point. Okay, I know we could sit here for like 4 more hours and talk shop because we love this so much, but we will have to go. But of course, we will be in chat next week on Friday, same time, same bat channel, for session 3, part 1. And oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. So please tune in.
This is sort of the Ocean's 11 episode coming up.
It really is. It really is. I am probably going to watch Ocean's 11. It is like queued up on my Netflix and live tweet it in preparation for next week. So tune in for that. Oh, it's going to be so good. And Omarius. Anyway, I can say no more, but it's going to be very good. We've actually got a couple of other events I want to tell you real quick, and then we'll close out. On Thursday, March 15th at 5 p.m. Pacific time, Monty and Shauna are going to do a really, really cool thing. They are going to have creative space where, they are going to talk about processes and topics that are of interest to them as creatives. And so, a lot of times you get interview shows where they're asking the same questions all the time, and they really want to kind of get to show and share with you what happens when creative people are just talking shop in a room together, right? Be a fly on the wall of people talking about what they're most passionate about and what they're really feeling, and having these deep discussions. And we're going to stream that on Twitch. So you will definitely not want to miss that. It's a really, really different kind of thing that we're offering that I think will be really illuminating for any of you creative folks out there. So that'll be on Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific. And then on Sunday, so then we'll have Friday, of course, the Ocean's 11 Invisible Sun Edition episode, which we'll all be live in chat for. So come with our questions. And then on Sunday, March 18th, I'm going to have an RPG brunch chat. It's a weird thing I like to do, where I make brunch and I talk about RPGs. So, but we're going. I like to do it
for brunch. Do you know yet?
I haven't decided yet. That is, we are. I am not that much of a planner. There will be coffee, maybe some banana bread. We'll probably be sharing stuff, but that'll happen at 10 a.m. Pacific, noon Central Time, and the topic will be kind of about new game masters, piggybacking off of our new game master month we did in sort of January, February. So like come hang out with me in Twitch chat. We'll like make brunch and sort of this will be me with the camera and you in the chat, and like having a really, really back and forth interaction. So and I would love it if you would bring someone who's maybe on the edge of game mastering for the first time. Maybe that's you. And I think it's going to be a kind of hurrah, let's share some tips and encourage each other to become GMs, which is great. So that is it for our live from Actuality event. Thank you so much. Again, spread the word about the Raven Wants with you, what you have, if you want to see another season, because we would love to see, we'd love to be able to make more of it. So, all right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Good night.